Good morning. Well, it's morning here right before I go to work, but I was wanting to talk about Manasseh, which was a king of Judah in 2 Chronicles 33. I read this a while back, and I believe God was telling me to share this on YouTube or Rumble or something like that, but and I didn't, and I felt bad about it, and I'm gonna do it now. But Manasseh was a king in Judah, and he did a lot of bad things, and this is 2 Chronicles 33. It says, Manasseh was 12 years old when he became king, and he reigned in Jerusalem 55 years. He did what was evil in the Lord's sight, following the detestable practices of the pagan nations that the Lord had driven from the land ahead of the Israelites. He rebuilt the pagan shrines his father Hezekiah had broken down. He constructed altars for the images of Baal, or Baal, I've heard it pronounced, but Baal is how I pronounce it, and set up Asherah poles. He also bowed before all the powers of the heavens and worshipped them. So he worshipped gods, like all other gods, basically, which was against one of the 10 Commandments. He built pagan altars in the temple of the Lord, the place where the Lord had said, My name will remain in Jerusalem forever. He built these altars for all the powers of the heavens in both courtyards of the Lord's temple. Manasseh also sacrificed his own sons in the fire in the valley of Ben Hinnom, or however you pronounce that. So he sacrificed his own kids, which, like in the fire and stuff, and that's pretty bad. I couldn't see myself doing something like that. Sorry, I'm having to find where I was at. He practiced sorcery, divination, whatever, and witchcraft, and he consulted with mediums and psychics. He did much that was evil in the Lord's sight, arousing his anger. He made God mad. Manasseh even took a carved idol he had made and set it up in God's temple, the very place where God had told David and his son Solomon, My name will be honored forever in this temple and in Jerusalem. So he put an idol inside the temple. So that's pretty much a slap in the face of God right there. The city I have chosen from among all the tribes of Israel. If the Israelites will be careful to obey my commands, this is what God has said. If the Israelites will be careful to obey my commands, all the laws, decrees, and regulations given through Moses, I will not send them into exile from this land that I set aside for your ancestors. So, a long time before this, God had said right there that he won't send Israel into exile if they just obey his commands and do what he says and just worship him. And obviously later on that's what happened. But Manasseh led the people of Judah and Jerusalem to do even more evil than the pagan nations that the Lord had destroyed when the people of Israel entered the land. So he did more evil than the people that were there before Israel got there. So he did pretty bad. And I got a Haley's Bible Handbook, and in this it says that Manasseh was the wickedest of all of Judah's kings and had the longest reign, 55 years. And it says that's told also in 2 Kings 21, 1 through 18. So he rebuilt the idols his father of Hezekiah had destroyed and reestablished Baal worship. He burnt his own children in the fire. He filled Jerusalem with blood. Tradition says that he had the prophet Isaiah sawn in half. And so that's what tradition says. But and it also says that a king, Esarhaddon or something like that of Assyria, said that, like there's an inscription, was talking about his march to stuff, people were kissing his feet, and says a related inscription lists these 22 kings, among who is Manasseh, king of Judah. But Manasseh did a lot of bad stuff. It says, starting at verse 10, the Lord spoke to Manasseh and his people, but they ignored all his warnings. So they probably had prophets and stuff like that telling them what God was saying, warning them, hey, something's about to happen to you if you don't turn your life around. But they ignored all his warnings. So the Lord sent the commanders of the Assyrian armies, which was, the Assyrians were, if you look through history, they're pretty bad. And they took Manasseh prisoner. They put a ring through his nose, bound him in bronze chains, and led him away to Babylon. Put a ring in his nose, kind of like a cow, I guess. And they let him, probably put chains and stuff on it and let him in there. But, well, I don't know if they attached the chains to the ring or not, but it doesn't say in here. It just says they bound them in chains, put that ring on his nose, so I don't know. But while in deep distress, which means he was in a pretty low place in his life right there. I mean, you got to admit, that's a pretty low place. Manasseh sought the Lord his God and sincerely humbled himself before the God of his ancestors. And when he prayed, the Lord listened to him and was moved by his request. So the Lord brought Manasseh back to Jerusalem and to his kingdom, when Manasseh finally realized that the Lord alone is God. So he was like, man, that was a low place in his life. And he broke down right there and prayed to God. And God saw that it was sincere. And it says he listened to him, and it touched God, and God basically opened his eyes. It says, after this, Manasseh rebuilt the outer wall of the city of David from west of the Gihon spring in the Kidron Valley to the fish gate, and continuing around the hill of Opal. You're gonna, maybe you can forgive me if I'm butchering some of these names. I'm not exactly a scholar, so. He built the wall very high, and he stationed his military officers in all of the fortified towns of Judah. Manasseh also removed the foreign gods and the idol from the Lord's temple. He tore down all the altars he had built on the hill where the temple stood, and all the altars that were in Jerusalem, and he dumped them outside the city. Then he restored the altar of the Lord and sacrificed peace offerings and thanksgiving offerings on it. He also encouraged the people of Judah to worship the Lord, the God of Israel. However, the people still sacrificed at the pagan shrines, though only to the Lord their God. The rest of the events of Manasseh's reign, his prayer to God, and the words of the seers spoke to him in the name of the Lord, the God of Israel, are recorded in the book of the kings of Israel. Manasseh's prayer, the account of the way God answered him, and an account of all his sins and unfaithfulness are recorded in the record of the seers. It includes a list of the locations where he built pagan shrines and set up Asher poles and idols before he humbled himself and repented. So he did a lot of bad stuff, and God was mad at him, and he warned him that, something's about to happen. If you don't turn your life around. And he didn't listen, nobody else listened. So, somebody came in, brought him down to, his lowest place in his life, and he repented, and God forgave him and restored him back. And the rest, it looks like the rest of his life, he did what was right. And I guess it kind of shows that no matter what you do, if you stop what you're doing and tell God you're sorry and ask Him to forgive you, then He's going to forgive you no matter what you've done or where you're at in your life. You can always ask God to forgive you, and He'll forgive you as long as you just stop what you're doing and show Him that you're sincere. I think there's a line, like, someone who keeps doing the same thing, but they say sorry, but they keep doing the same thing. They don't really mean it, like, sincerely. He sincerely meant it and stopped. And that's what you got to do in your life for God to keep forgiving you. I know I can speak from experience because I've done a lot of crazy things in the past. I'll admit I've done drugs and alcohol, and it took me getting down to the lowest point of my life, which it wasn't as bad as that, obviously, but it was a low point in my life where I was losing everything, and I'm the kind of person that has to learn the hard way. I've always been like that. Kind of reminds me, the song DC Talk, The Hard Way, from the 90s, it kind of describes how I was. I had to learn the hard way in a lot of areas. I guess I'm hard-headed, and I got down to the lowest point in my life, but whenever I asked God, to help me, all of a sudden, I got back in church, and, really, my heart was really sincere. He gave me my wife. I've got a house of my own. I got a good job and all that. And all that's because of God. And He forgave me of my sins. So I know He can forgive other people of their sins. So I guess that might be all I've got to say. Just reach out to God, repent, but also forgive other people too. So that God will forgive you. If you don't forgive people, then at the end of your life, God's not going to forgive you because you didn't forgive other people. That's something I've struggled with, is forgiving, and God's working on me with that, and I've had to forgive some things. But that's all I got for today. Have a good day, and hope this helps you.